Enrolling in Lindsay Kemp's London Dance Centre, Bowie began to explore the world of mime.
What is the best thing you've done on any stage anywhere that still lives with you, that you use as a measuring stick?
That's very hard. One of the most exciting things I did was work with old Lindsay Kemp, back in where would it be? I can't remember which theatre we did it in, but years ago. It was a combined sort of mixed media show. That was very good.
And it didn't have to be a big, glossy, exciting thing. I mean, it was a small, but something important to you.
Well, yes,
right.
David was very into sort of his whole Lindsay Kemp thing at that moment. Marceau, whiteface, the miming.
Got him to show me a bit. He was very into all that mime stuff.
Definitely he learnt a lot from Lindsay, but that was sort of a side thing.
He taught David stagecraft. David learnt mime from him, and he was very, very grateful to Lindsay for what he learnt.
Lindsay always said that he often did his shows on acid, which I thought was pretty good because it's quite hard to do shows on acid.
Lindsay was absolutely besotted with David. He was totally in love with him.
David had been exploring that whole sort of visual presentation thing, and the whole thing about the face and the eyes and the body movements, and that's what drew me into Feathers.
Bowie toured with Lindsay Kemp for a year before leaving to form the band Feathers with Hermione Farthingale, the girl who inspired life on Mars.
The first time I saw David was at an underground psychedelic club in Covent Garden called Middle Earth, and he was there with his group Feathers and his girlfriend Hermione. It was a sort of mixed media group, as they were called at the time. He wasn't doing much of the lead singing in Feathers. He was much more the mime artist and the person who was expressing the music. I thought he was magnetic, I really did.
I rented this house 45 years ago, and as one did, I put an ad in the paper, and Hermione Farthingale rang and said she'd like to see the place. She said, the trouble is, there are two of us. And I said, that's fantastic. Anyway, she came, and the boyfriend she had was David Bowie. David wasn't known then. He held back. He didn't so much mingle with the rest of us. He used to borrow my clothes because I was in the fashion business. Anything I had that was funky, he would borrow and wear.
I would go with him to Carnaby Street, you know, in 64, 65. He was very trendy dresser. He always was in a uniform or in a look. He didn't slop out in a pair of ripped jeans and T-shirts.
Some years later, Hermione left David because she was doing small-time movies, and she fell in love with one of the actors in the movie, and she left David, and David was broken-hearted.
Well, he was in love with her, but he didn't treat her very well.
David had a serious control over his heart for many, many years. His heart lay with performing, songwriting and music, and if he thought his heart was broken, it was only for a minute in time.
He was a rascal, and of course the neighbours objected to us being so wild. So I didn't want to leave the house, but David had to go.
Bowie considered leaving music altogether. In 1967, he retreated to a Buddhist monastery in Scotland.
I think a lot of youth find it very hard to find exactly where it is they're supposed to fit into this new, rather terrifying world. I think I would feel very much like that. I think maybe I would shrink back into wanting to find a more spiritual kind of life. I think maybe I would backpack through the world and get to India and do all those things that my generation tended to do in the 60s, you know. It would be a very hard choice. But mind you, I would, yes, I would become a monk, but a monk who played an awful lot of guitar.
He went to Samueling Tibetan Centre in Dumfriesshire and stayed there for about a month and did some very intensive meditation practice. And as a result of that, I think at one stage he did consider becoming a monk.
I was still sort of wondering whether I should be, if I'd found God as a Buddhist, or whether I wanted to be a rock and roll star.
He told me that he never really lost the music and that it was with him all the time, on the cushion, in the dining room, out walking in the hills. It was just buzzing through his head. And he realised, I think, eventually that he was not being true to himself. And so he packed up and went back to London and show business.